everybody, welcome back to That Fiction Life. Today we are talking about a book that has stolen away my soul and chained it up in a coffin until book 2 comes out. And that is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. Yes, I loved it that much to be so dramatic. As you can also see, I am cosplaying a vampire going to a masquerade ball, as that has great significance in the book. If you are new to my channel, we do all sorts of pop culture videos about books, TV and movies. So if you are in any kind of fandom, I would love to have you join the ranks. The Beautiful is set in the 1870s New Orleans, where our main protagonist Selene has moved to in order to flee her life in Paris. She's enchanted by this city and by the glamour of it, but her daring personality gets her in a little bit of trouble as she gets involved with this group called the Court of Lions. And in their lair, a dead body turns up, and it appears to be the work of a serial killer who seems to have Selene in their sights. This is a very gothic and atmospheric mystery romance that has just revolutionized vampire fiction for me. I am deceased after this book. And not to be extra, but it's all I've thought about in the last few days. First of all, Selene is such a badass. She does not waver. She defies everything that I am accustomed to seeing in vampire novels, especially vampire romance books. I was honestly taken aback at how forward and confrontational she was. Usually, her behavior would be expected of the male protagonist, but she's not cocky and she's not overly confident in herself. She is just such a great character who's very well rounded, which means that her and her love interest have very good ways of bouncing off of each other because they're kind of playing on equal ground. It is just totally reminiscent of The Cruel Prince with Jude and Carden. This book gave me such nostalgic feelings of the old school YA without giving us the repetition of the usual story of a human girl who finds out about vampires and suddenly all her morals go out the window and she just kind of falls for them for no reason, just because they're, you know, watching them sleep and stuff, because apparently that's a good thing. While there is a version of forbidden romance in this book, it's not in the way you think. Which brings me on to the plot twist. When the various truths start materializing, I was losing it. Panic reading is what I like to call it, and it's where I walk around my room pacing as I read because I can't control myself. I'm not going to sugarcoat and say that every single thing happened out of the blue, because I think for certain things to play out in any book, there are convenient events that occur in order to move the story along, but the reveals and twists were insane as hell. You know when you're reading and you kind of just look into the distance for a little bit because you can't believe what you just read? I really liked how diversity was portrayed in this book. It just goes to show that writers of colour need to be writing these stories, in particular one set in the past, because history is rampant with racism and inequality, but those themes don't often get explored. In books especially, like romance and things, writers tend to focus on the glamorous side of the past and how marvellous it must have been to live in the past, but it wasn't like that for everyone. So to get a main character who is from mixed descent was just... This is a very dark book, and I'd say that it falls into the older side of YA, bordering on new adult. There are alternating chapters where you hear from the serial killer and all about their murderous thoughts. The concept of vampires in this also is... There's a very good balance of, yes, we're accepting that they're all very good looking, but we can't forget that there are kind of murderous killers. So I like that it kind of pulls at the more Dracula-esque type of vampire. So those are my non-spoiler thoughts. If you'd like to check out the book, I'll link it below. Farewell if you haven't read the book, okay, because I'm going to be revealing these plot twists because I need a little bit of fandom therapy right now. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, please depart and read the book because it's honestly my new favourite thing. It's basically just taken over my life and I can't wait for book 2. I just want to go into hibernation until the next summer. Selene, first of all, when we get that bomb drop that she's just casually a murderer, I really thought that she was just going to be this lovely nice girl on a ship headed to a new life. Perhaps if Selene was someone to command such respect, she would not have been forced to leave Paris, to lie to her father, or murder a man. And that's how the chapter ends. And immediately I was thinking, what is this? She is sassy. She doesn't really hold back. The first real instance that we sort of see that is where she's selling her handkerchiefs to Ahdieh, and she says, I should hope so, or else I have no idea what in the hell I've been doing here for the last 3 hours. And everyone just gasps, okay? Because these are supposed to be very good and polite girls who live in a nunnery, and here she just says that to a potential customer. I mean, iconic. Let's talk about Selene and Bastian's first meeting. We still don't know what that was about, you know, in the alley. Why were you beating up this man? Unanswered question, I want to know. So that whole interaction, I was living for their relationship already. And of course, their relationship takes a long time to develop, which I really liked, because honestly, sometimes characters end up making out in the first 100 pages after they've had one scene together and they're already in love. So Bastian, we are already told, is not a gentleman. And when Selene tells him that, and he says, oh, is that what you think? And she says, yes. He comes back to her with, I don't give an F. When he said that, I was so taken aback, because especially in those times, this kind of language is not the norm. When Selene explained that to her it felt like he was giving her respect because he was treating her as an equal, my perspective changed like this. I mean, it makes complete sense, because everyone in those days would kind of hover around women. They wouldn't really behave as they would usually, because you have to be nice around the ladies. The fact that Bastian's like, I don't give a crap, I'm going to behave to you as I do to other people. Oh my god. Marry me immediately. So Bastian is really one of a kind. I mean, the fact that he has a snake, can we just talk about that scene? Because that was a beautiful scene. Just a python roaming amongst the guests. One of my favourite lines from Selene was, do you have a habit of dressing like a ghoul and terrorising those around you? It's a nickname from my childhood. Their interactions are amazing. I really was not expecting Annabelle to become one of the victims. So, when they reveal that she has been killed and this detective comes in, first of all, I do not like him. He is, you know, wants to conduct these interviews with these people, and Bastian just says no. His lines throughout that whole section, oh, work of art. I learned from example, Detective Grimaldi, the mind is a sword, knowledge in its wheatstone. And when he refuses for any of his guests to be interviewed privately, he kind of comes out of his shell, because this whole time he was sort of watching the situation from afar. When the time permits, he becomes very intense and is able to sort of own a room, and everyone is a little bit afraid of him. I liked how Selene was observing that this whole time, and she kind of thinks, oh, what would it be like to be able to captivate an audience like that, to have people genuinely just listen to you. I mean, I love the fact that she was kind of thinking, but I want that power too. Why is he the one that gets to do that? I love Selene. I feel like she's a little bit of a reincarnation of me in the 1870s. So then shortly after that, we get a little bit of insight into the vampires in this world. I like that immediately there's not this big reveal, oh, vampires exist. 200 pages, we still don't really know. In this POV chapter from the serial killer, when they talk about how the only light of the sun is able to kill vampires, how everything else is just myth. And this whole time I was trying to figure out whether we have seen Bastian in any kind of light, because of course we know about him, but we'll talk about that at the end. Oh, here I tabbed a funny line, that was hilarious. When Ahdieh is talking to Selene, I see the way you look at Bastian. How do I look? Parched, mon ami. Like you wandered the desert for 40 years seeking the promised land. I look thirsty. I think we're all a little bit thirsty for Bastian, I must say. So genuinely, we page 230, and we only really get a real scene with Bastian and Selene. And here's where it was about to go to hell for me, because when Bastian saves Selene from the first attack and they get really close together and it's all very romantic, I thought, please, this cannot be their first kiss, or right after the knight in shining armor saved my life. No. The fact that they got interrupted was so perfect because the angst was building up and it just got snatched away. One of my favourite scenes was when Bastian and Selene promised not to lie to each other, and when she finally tells him her whole life is built on a lie. She's never told a soul that she's both from the east and the west. And when he tells her things about himself, they're truly falling in love, and it doesn't feel forced, but it was kind of like a wall fell down between them. When he calls her mon coeur, the breath left me. So after that whole interaction, my whole existence shatters. Because they decide to not be together because they're bad for each other, which, first of all, very progressive of them, but at the same time, don't break my feels. When they both say, don't fall in love with me, you're too good for me, and I'm not good for you. It was so heartbreaking to read that. If you agree, I believe we're safe being passing acquaintances. And then Selene's thoughts, but who wants to be safe? Oh, here with the mon coeur again. You know, you're trying to be friends and you're calling her my heart. This is not how it goes. So Selene is then kind of left to fend for herself because the gardener gets killed and she pretty much gets thrown out of the convent. I loved this whole segment because usually you have a YA character who's just reckless for no reason. Selene here is really trying to come up with a plan and she's telling people about it. And before she goes off on her own, this is such a key thing for me, she attempts to do everything in her power to kind of get people involved and to not put herself in unnecessary danger. When Ahdieh is sort of revealed as a little bit of a traitor, my mind was blown because I really thought Bastian was a vampire, and the fact that he's the only human in this whole gang and their only job is to keep him alive, I mean, that is just stellar writing because it really led me astray. And I was so shocked at Ahdieh for sort of betraying Selene in that moment because I really saw a bond between them, and I really loved Ahdieh. I mean, that whole suit that she came out in that very first scene in the Court of Lions, she really reminded me of Cara Delevingne and what she wore to the royal wedding of Princess Eugenie. Do you remember that look? It was literally a top hat and a suit, and it was so badass. So when she betrayed Selene, I was thinking, oh, come on right now. I really thought it was over, you know, their friendship is done. But then we get to hear a little bit of an explanation, and I think they will remain friends. When it was revealed that Nigel wasn't actually dead, actually, when they find his body, like they're about to hook up, imagine you're in bed with this guy you've grown to love, and you just see a severed head. That was kind of traumatic for me. So imagine actually being Selene. Nigel turns out to be alive. He is insane and wants to kill Selene. So when they end up in that church place and they're having a fight, Bastian comes in at the right moment. I lost it when Bastian ended up getting hurt. And when he started falling down, is basically dead, and the whole family turned up like, hello, we're gonna let him die because he was meant to stay human. When Selene comes to the rescue and pretty much says, oh, I'm going to forget him if you turn him and keep him alive. Sorry, no, unacceptable, how dare you? I do not like this plot point. I've seen it in a few books. I'm not a big fan of memory wiping, but nevertheless, it broke my heart. And I was so mad, I wanted to throw the book across the room. I didn't because we keep books safe, but I really wanted to just get my Jon Snow sword here and just stab at it a little bit. I adored the fact that Selene had her little silver dagger tucked away this whole time, and she just came out with it and was stabbing at Nigel. Like, oh my god. And the thoughts that she was having were brilliant. She was really overcoming her past from everything that happened to her in Paris. She was going to forget that near assault that happened to her, and it was such a beautiful scene of her going, I'm not weak, boom. Yes. So then the book pretty much ends with her going to the hospital, and that detective is there like, oh, I'm going to look after you. Please just leave the plot. I feel a love triangle brewing, and I get enraged. Then we get to the big reveal and I lost it. Bastian's sister being alive was the biggest sort of mind-blowing thing that happened in this book, and the fact that she's a werewolf, it's connected everything. So this detective person is actually related to this Luca person who's with Bastian's sister, and I'm like, is the detective a werewolf? Can I just, please, someone needs to tell me, because this is like vampire werewolf situation. This is the best vampire book that I've ever read. I love that it's set in the past. I love the other themes that it explores. So those are all my thoughts about the book. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to comment your thoughts below if you've read it, because I'd love to keep discussing with you. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!